The Dons climb into the 8 after a strong second half against the Roos. COVID continues to affect the fixture, but destiny is in our hands. This is the Sash, definitely not the official podcast of the Essendon Football Club. I'm your host, Rob, here with you. And joining me on Zoom is Mert, Jesse, and Oli. I'll go to you first, Merty. How you going?
Yeah, good, mate. It's incredible what a win does for your Monday.
Well said. Well said. Oli, how are you?
Yeah, good. Echoing what Mert says there. It equally as incredible as what a win does for your Monday is how deflating it can be when you lose, particularly when you're locked down. So I'm glad we didn't go down that path yesterday.
Yeah, well said. And Jesse, how are you?
So really. Not really sure what to take out of the weekend, to be honest. It's obviously great to get a win, but quite a number of pretty worrying signs that popped up, which could come back to haunt us over the next couple of weeks if we don't fix them. So, yeah, a lot to debunk, I think, today on the pod.
Yeah, rightly said. Now, listeners, you're probably wondering why I'm sounding a little bit different. So, obviously, we are in lockdown, we are on Zoom, but me being the brains trust that I am, left a cable for the mixer at the studio. So I'm currently using a pair of headphones that my girlfriend has lent me to record the pod tonight. So it might sound a little bit different, but I'll make sure that for Thursday's Primo pod and then every pod for hopefully what is a short lockdown, we'll be back and sounding nice and crisp and clear. But let's jump straight into it. Jess, you were right in saying it was pretty average at time. I think the first half was really, really worrying. As a collective in our little messenger thread, we were saying some pretty negative stuff, and I mean, we just can't seem to defend the ball in transition. Like, I don't know what it is about it, and we were lazy at times. Players weren't running back. Big concerns. What do you think, Jess?
Well, what was massively concerning to me, I wasn't aware of this until I saw it on Fox Footy, but for the entire year across the competition, we're actually ranked last for defending opposition's ball movement. It's been something that has obviously been, it has occurred to me that we haven't been overly great at defending ball movement, but to be the worst in the competition, is really, really concerning. Obviously, it's Rutten's first year in charge, but I agree with some testaments that Mert has made over the past few weeks, just around our game plan becoming, a lot more stagnant. Moving a lot more back to what we were like in patches with Worsfold last year. I don't know whether it was us playing at Metricon and thinking that we had Worsfold for a coach again, but certainly to be ranked last in the competition for defending an opposition's ball movement, there's just no way that we can ever contend for a flag if we don't rectify that. So a lot to work on.
Yeah, well said. Mert, what did you think of the first half?
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of see it from, the first couple of minutes of the first quarter that we hadn't rocked up to play. Certainly not as certainly not to the level that we'd want to, and not to the level that no doubt the coaches have kind of set for us.
Yeah.
I think, Nick hit the nail on the head in terms of our defensive running was pretty poor. I thought really for the whole day, our tackling was appalling. And, the number of times that either we were nowhere near even playing the tackle, or we were right in the tackle, and for some reason we were tackling basically with our fingers rather than tackling with your shoulder and your chest. Like, I didn't really see until probably the last quarter, or maybe, halfway through the third quarter, that we were actually tackling with intent at any stage. And I don't know what it is about particularly Zerha, but we play Zerha like we're shit scared of him. We really do. We're scared to tackle him. We can't, even our senior players kind of tackle him, like trying to grip him with their fingers or something and hold back. Like, it's, I mean, it was obviously a pretty appalling spectacle for certainly the first half. And then I thought we really had a stranglehold over the game for really all the second half, basically.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree. Oli, what did you make of it?
Not quite as bleak as Jesse and Mert. Look, I can't escape the fact I was banging my head against the wall watching the first half unfold yesterday, but I think this is a markedly improved side, North Melbourne, to the one that we played earlier in the year.
Yeah.
They travelled over to Perth last week, beat West Coast at their home ground. They came to play in the first half. We didn't. Yes, we were shit. Yes, we were lazy. Yes, nothing was working for us. But equally as pleasing for me is the fact that we were able to go in at half time, make the necessary adjustments. A lot of players pulled their head out of their ass, and we've come away with the win, which is not something that I think we can say that this team has been overly consistent in being able to do in previous years.
Yeah. No, I do agree. It does show the development that we're able to get it back on our terms and we're able to take control of the game. But I think the thing that stands out is that, you know, if we put in that first half performance in a finals type scenario, or even the next 2 weeks against, you know, or next 3 weeks really against some pretty good sides, I don't think he can get away with the win, because if you put in that level of performance against the Bulldogs, the Sydney, or even the Giant, they'll probably put you to the sword. And then rather than going into half time with a very narrow margin, you're looking at maybe upwards of 30 points, and then it's going to be pretty hard to get back. So yeah, I'm bullish on the fact that we did turn it around, but you know, you'd hope that's the last time, at least while we are up in Queensland, that we're going to be putting in, you know, a half like that. So yeah, definitely more to work on. What do you reckon, Jess?
Just back to the ball movement, it's really concerning that an AFL team is allowing any team from their back line to string together 7 or 8 uncontested kicks from the back 50 to the forward 50, and there to be a mark and a set shot on goal. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a team from my memory defend the opposition with the ball as badly as what we did for components of that game. Yeah. I mean, fundamental football.
Adelaide were pretty close against us.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just more focused on us when we're playing then. But certainly, I mean, fundamental defensive acts, just sticking close to your man and not guarding space in certain areas where, you know, there were certain passages where you just knew exactly where they were going to pass the ball, and our players were just negating space, not going to a man. And I don't know, there's elements of football where you just sometimes need to say to your team, let's just go man on man for a certain period of the game.
Yeah.
And I just feel like from Rutten's perspective, it was, again, just an in-game. There was no real in-game coaching that I saw, aside from just turning up the pressure, that changed the game. And whether that was a good speech at halftime or 3/4 time, we'll never know. But still, from a defensive point of view, in that last quarter, in the last 2 minutes of the game, they were still moving the ball as easily as they were moving the ball for the entirety of the game. I mean, in that last 2 minutes, they could have had 2 set shots on goal, which were all from uncontested marks. So it's just one of those things that I just have concerns about, where is it the coach's perspective? Is it the player's perspective? How are you not closer to your man in these circumstances when you can so clearly see this unfolding in front of you? It happened to us against Carlton earlier this year. Carlton just chipped the ball around throughout the entirety of the game, beat us. We did nothing about it.
The Freo game is another shocking example, which is pretty similar to yesterday, where they had instances where they just went from end to end pretty easily, uncontested ball, basically just off working our zone out really quite easily, and did it from defence to attack, like in a matter of 5 kicks. So
yeah.
I mean, I think that we actually, in that last, certainly from the 3rd quarter onwards, I think that we definitely tightened the screws. I think it's probably a bit unfair to say that, you know, we weren't defending really for the whole game, because I don't think that was the case at all in the second half. And like,
I just think we had the ball more in our hands though in the second half, which is why it was easier to get that impression that we were defending better. We just had the ball in our hands more. Whereas as soon as they got the ball in their hands, it just went straight back to how it was. They just didn't have as many possessions in the second half.
I mean, I think, I'm not sure what the numbers say and what the stats say about that, but I thought Jordan Ridley had an absolutely outstanding game, and he had a really typically consistently strong game for him again. And I mean, without him, it would have been a markedly different story. But I mean, I just thought we got absolutely crucified in the middle for parts of the game, for significant parts of the game.
Yeah.
One thing Yeah, and on that, one thing that I noticed particularly, and I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts about this, but it seemed like a lot, and in particular within the centre clearances in that first half, we were getting first touch of the ball, but ultimately we were getting either pushed off or we weren't getting a clean possession, and then it'd turn over. And as soon as that centre clearance went against us, we were out on our feet trying to get back and trying to defend. And, to what you were saying, Jesse, they were carving us up with clean, uncontested possessions and kicks and spread, and we were making them nearly for stages there look like the Hawthorn of the three-peat era.
Yeah.
I do think, to your point, Jesse, you questioned whether there were some coaching directives at halftime, or was it just a case of us dialing up the pressure? And was that the difference? I think it's a bit of both. With regards to the pressure, I think we did help to stamp out. I mean, they were certainly not getting it as easy coast to coast as what they were in the first half.
Yeah.
But I think for us, one of the things that really hurt us was at the other end as well. And notably the laid out of Harry Jones and just having a complete lack of inside 50 targets. There was a stage there where we're, getting comfortably on top in the midfield, but we just weren't having the presence to pull it down. And Peter Wright had probably his best game for the club, so he was a real shining light. But I think the players and the coaching personnel struggled to adapt, at least in that first half, to find a key marking target avenue to goal in the absence of Jones.
Yeah. It did shit me a little bit when the commentary, love having David King on a North game, harping on about the absence of Ben Cunnington and going, oh, look at this midfield. And I'm just sitting there going like, man, like we've got like 3 of our like normal 8 midfielders still available, and like they're harping on about Ben Cunnington. Look, it was a worry, and again, it's just I've been banging on about it for the last few weeks, but I just really worry that we're not going to have the cattle to, if we do hang on to this 8th position, or even manage to get to 7 or 6. I really do worry that we're not going to have the strength of a side to actually be able to contend with the good guys at the point at the end of the year if we do get there. You mentioned Peter Wright, Oli, and I think we may as well swing into the good, in the back half of the game. I think what he did in the third quarter, I think, was the real turning point in the game. I think people will say, Stringer won us the game, but without what Peter Wright was doing in that third quarter, I mean, he was doing it all day, really, but those 2 really pivotal goals going against a bit of the flow really just set us up for there. And I just was amazed with his work rate. He was around the ground. He was everywhere. He was marking. He was rucking. He was making smothers. Like, this is 7-seater, 200-centimeter Peter, and he was doing more than some of the small guys were. And I've put on the agenda a lot this season that I don't know what his ceiling is, but if that's what you can get out of a guy week in, week out, that's an awesome player. Like, that is the prototype of what you want for a forward ruck player who can drift forward, kick goals, but impacts around the ground. I thought Peter was unreal.
Additionally to that, Rob. Sorry, you go, Jesse.
Sorry, you go. I was just going to say, you get a few kilometers out of a Ford Titanium, don't you? Across the board without refilling. So I think you lived up to his name.
Yeah, I think you do.
Rob, just in addition to what you were saying there, I think also one of the most pleasing aspects about his game was that he was actually attacking the contest like what we've really wanted to see from him. There were a couple of times where he crashed a pack, and I think one of the criticisms that people have typically had about Peter Wright is that he can be a little bit passive when contesting.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case on the weekend. He was, there were a couple of really key contests where he was able to either, crash into a pack, take the grab, or at least bring it to ground. And I think, exactly right. If he can deliver those type of performances week in, week out, then we've got a player there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, on that point, I mean, I find it. I've always actually been quite a big fan of Peter Wright, particularly considering he always used to play well against us. Funnily enough, hence we picked him up. Usually works that way, but for someone of the age of 24, geez, he's had the moz for his whole career. I mean, how often do you see key forwards at that age absolutely, kill the competition. I mean, generally speaking, they peak at the age of 26, 27, 28 even. I mean, this guy, who knows what his ceiling could be? We've had discussions around this earlier, but he's only 24 years old. Seriously, like we could be onto something really good here. We may not be, but the fact is he's 24, right? So if he's still passive hitting contests, I can guarantee you that will eventually change through him just maturing and getting older. So definitely some massive upside to have him in the team.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It's interesting to think, obviously, with the absence of Jones, he was required to do more. He probably got looked at a bit more as a target than them obviously going to Jones. But in the absence of Jones, Peter Wright he had Robbie Tarrant on him, and he beat Robbie Tarrant quite a few times. And he's no slouch. Yeah, I know he's had a lot of time off footy, but he is no easy beat player. So, I'm very interested to see how this Essendon forward line does shape up over the next few years. Can they go with just Jones, Peter Wright, and then Alec Waterman in the goal square type scenario, or are they going to look for someone else? So, I'm very interested to know about that. Mert, Packo, he was pretty special. What do you think?
Yeah, he's just quickly turning into, or his year is quickly turning into what is really just an exceptional year. I just looked at some of his stats over the last five weeks before. And so this week was actually the least disposals he's had in the past 5 weeks, but he's going 17 disposals, 23 last week, 25 the week before, 24 the week before that, and 29 the week before that. So he's averaging 23.6 disposals a game. And we know a huge part of his game currently is him playing forward. He's kicking, averaging 2.6 goals a game in that time too. So, I mean, given the role he's playing for us, and I mean, for the first quarter, I only really ever saw him starting the guts. And I think as the game wore on, he probably started forward more. And then when we really needed to win the game, he's probably back in the guts. There's some incredible numbers. They really are. Like, he's a contested beast. I think his averages for, the games he's played, obviously he missed a few with injury, but his averages are right up there around the top 10 in the AFL for his contested ball, as well as obviously his goal kicking too. So, this guy is just so important for us, and he continues to be underrated around the league and continues to cop the kind of commentary which is saying he only does it against the lower teams in the comp. But I think, you look at those numbers that I've just read out and you think about his game against Melbourne when he had 24 disposals and kicked 1 goal, I think, and then the week after against Geelong, and I mean, kicked 1 goal too, so he could have easily had 3 or 4. And the week after against Geelong, he kicked 4 goals and had 25 disposals. So, yeah, I think it seems that he's turned a corner. Seems to be in a great space. If you hear him speaking after the game, it just sounds like he's really enjoying his footy and really enjoying the kind of culture that's being cultivated at the moment by Truck Rutt and enjoying the boys around him. It's reflecting in his football.
If he keeps going this way, you'd have to surely be in All-Australian contention if he keeps moving forward for the rest of the season with these statistics.
I think his first 6 or 7 games probably rule him out of there because he was pretty. I mean, obviously he was huge against St Kilda, but for most of, I guess, the first half of the year, he's either injured or not performing anywhere near as well as what he's been performing in those rounds. So, but like, who knows as well. We've still got 4 games to play. If he continues on in that, then he'll be putting his name forward.
He's playing like a man in a contract year, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just give him just whatever
he wants.
Yeah.
Blank check.
Just
give him the Ford Titanium in 5 years.
Yeah, they can rename the new wing of the hangar the Packo Centre. I think we'll be pretty happy with that. He was superb. Someone else I really want to commend, and I think like Peter Wright was dominant, in the all game was the skipper. He's bounced back from injury. He's been really good. And when a lot of players were pretty weak, weren't doing much, he was leading by example. That mark going back with the flight was, showed real courage, which you always want to see from your captain. There's something I wanted to point out. I think it was the second quarter. Maybe it was the fourth, but I think it was the second because we were going left of the screen. And there was a goal kicked by one of the North Melbourne players where, again, the scenario if they got the easy ball movement and Heppell scolded, I think it might have been Hind and potentially Ridley. And what he did was he put both hands up to his ears and you could see him being like, I can't hear anything, boys. Like, why aren't you talking to each other? And he was really getting up in the grill of the players, which you want to see. And I know a lot of people say he can be a bit of a passive leader at times, but that was anything but that. So yeah, I thought Dyson had a really good game. What do you think, Ol?
Yeah, agree with you wholeheartedly there, Rob. It was, to be honest, I think he's actually putting together quite the year. A really underrated year. I think there's now been a few times where we've convened to review a game on a Monday, and he's one of the highlights that we want to commend. So, credit to the skipper. A lot of people had struck a line through his name at the start of this year, but he truly has reinvented himself by returning back to the back line where he started his career, and he just seems like a real asset down there, both from a leadership perspective. He can slow down the play. He knows how to marshal the troops down there, commands the respect of the players. He's like an extra coach, essentially. But additionally, he's just playing some really bloody good football. Tough, accountable good football. And it's pleasing to see. And, at this rate, he looks like he's got at least a couple of years in him when a lot of people might have thought his days are numbered coming into this year.
Yeah, no, it's a real big bounce back from injury, and he's obviously loved at the club, and he's very well respected for what he does in the leadership stakes. But he's, at the start of the year, we were concerned. We were like, man, he looks a bit off the pace, he looks a bit slow, but he's worked hard, he's disciplined, he's built himself back, and he's back to being one of our top 5-6 players each week. Jess?
Yeah.
No, it's awesome to see the skip get up and about, particularly what you were saying. I remember seeing that where he was actually, verbally having a go at the defenders. Couple of really bad turnovers from Hepp as well. I don't know if any of you saw that. 2 that resulted in goals, which were quite frustrating. He's obviously had a very good year by foot. So I will forgive him for those. But there were a couple of moments where I was banging my head on a wall thinking, oh God, we've got the Heppell of old. But nonetheless, absolute ripper day by him. I mean, that goal was clutch. I was pretty nervous when he was going back with the flight. That chair was right into his back as well.
Yeah, I thought he broke his
had
at that stage.
I was concerned. He's obviously like slipped discs or whatever in the past. So I mean,
what a typical North dog fucking shin bone of bullshit act too.
Seriously. My God. But look, I think it's a testament to the day, right? Again, the problem with North is that we don't really give 2 shits about them and, we're their biggest game of the year. So ultimately, when they're on the bottom of the ladder and we're waltzing into a game, it's a perfect time for them to get on top. But good win in the end.
Imagine being Aaron Hall and all of a sudden, after so many years of being the biggest P-heart in the AFL, trying to start Cale Hooker at halftime once the siren's gone. Deciding all of a sudden,
he broke an unenviable record for the most kicks without a contested possession on the weekend.
Loose ball, Aaron Hall.
I love that.
He's good for the Dream Team Bowl report.
So I've actually got it. I've got it here in front of me. So
okay,
the record: Aaron Hall has broken the record previously held by Aaron Mullet. So both a couple of shinboners there. Of most kicks without a contested possession, Hall had 28 kicks in the match against Essendon to pass Mullet's effort of 26 in round 19, 2013. So there you go.
Was that this week?
That was this week. That's so
Oh
good.
my God, that's crazy.
28 kicks is a lot of kicks.
Yeah. There we go.
His hair is something not of this earth.
No.
Him and Bailey Fritsch are vying for the worst haircuts you've ever seen. And the most fuck thing about it too is that it's probably an improvement on his cornrows.
They were pretty must. They were very
That's
must.
So bad.
They were very must. Someone else I want to give a big shout out to, boys, before I let you all pick someone. I've just been listing off my favourites of the game, but I'm going to go one more and then you guys can take the floor. I thought Matt Guelfi had a really, really good game. He was. I don't know. I couldn't quite tell you if he was playing half forward, half back, or on the wing. He was kind of here, there, and everywhere. But he got a clutch goal. He used the ball well. He had 3 goal assists and 8 score involvements. For someone who we know is a tough, pressure, hard nosed type, but not a very good user. That's a string to his bow that I haven't seen before from Guelf. It's generally been his knock that he isn't a very good user, but anybody getting 3 goal assists and a goal is a superb effort. So honestly, one of the better games that Guelf had. Might not be as noticeable because you didn't really see him bury anyone. But yeah, considering the outs we've had through our midfield group, with obviously Kyle Langford going down recently, we need someone who could be clean and use the ball well. Guelf, massive tick. So,
he's got a nice bit of funny kind of polish to him, it seems, because he did it against, I think it was the GWS game where he kicked a really nice goal, quite similar to the one that he kicked on the weekend, again on the run in that pocket. And in his field kicking, he certainly doesn't seem to be one who's, you don't notice him as an incredible kick of the ball, and he's actually probably prone to just as many turnovers as, some of the not such great disposers of the ball. But he seems to finish really well when he's kicking a goal. So I was, pleasantly surprised to see that. But at the same time, you got to love his attack on the contest and his attack on the footy. And I think that was really kind of embodied. And I think he really illustrated that when he's running down the wing. He didn't have a whole lot on. He decided to basically take the route of running straight through the North player rather than giving it off. Bizarre option, but it came off, and he ended up, probably drawing 1 or 2 of them and releasing over the top in the end. And again, that was probably his aggression in that particular contest that allowed the tackle to be broken. So, you can't fault his endeavour, Guelf.
Yeah.
I think whilst we're on the topic of players, that kind of embody that mentality, I think Sammy Durham was pretty awesome on debut.
Incredible
Showed a lot of really great signs. I mean, from what I can see, he seems like a pretty complete footballer. I mean, he is clean at ground level. I mean, that contest where in the back line he picked up the ball with one hand on one foot and then sidestepped a player and kicked it straight to someone on the tit. Taking a hanger in the goal square. He's got hops. Obviously can't finish, but that fits in the mould with Essendon pretty well. So he'll be right at home. But yeah, his aggression, his smother in that last quarter, him just throwing himself at the footy. It's a lot like Guelf, but it looks like he's obviously got a lot of other attributes which should allow him to seem to be at this stage what could look like a really long-term player for us. So I'm hoping that he just keeps progressing in leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I was really impressed by his marking just around the ground, and obviously got the one that, he should have converted the goal, didn't. But I've been speaking about it heaps the last few weeks, is how the real premier wingmans around the comp at the moment are good markers, and Sammy Durham looks like he's got that ability to him. So suddenly you look at how this side could shape up in the future and go, hey, this is the guy that we've needed on the wing who can take a reliable mark, as well as, being hard at it, being fast, a good user, all the things you want. Hey, maybe Dodora's found another one, and even better that we've taken him from Richmond.
Yeah, bang on.
Who's got someone else?
He definitely, just quickly, sorry on Sam.
No, you're right.
Our midfield was really struggling over the weekend, and for first gamer to come in and actually make a hugely solid contribution, the game could have been completely different without having him on that wing. Some of the balls that he got out there and the meters that he covered just seemed like he was everywhere. He was forward, back, on the wing. He always had space. He made a significant difference to our midfield over the weekend where we were really struggling. So to do that in his first game is, really understated and should be known.
Yeah, no, well said. Al?
A really obvious one here, but Darcy Parish has had another blinder. Depending on where you place him, he's probably within comfortably our top 3 best for the weekend, and could quite justifiably be our best. So he's collected 34 disposals, 17 kicks, 17 handballs, 6 tackles, 8 clearances. I think of those possessions, nearly half of them were contested. So there's 16 contested possessions. just goes to the year that he's having. He had a little bit of a quieter one. Was it against Adelaide? It was a little bit quieter.
Last week.
Yeah, and that was just not what we had come to expect from Das. I think everyone's just getting a little bit greedy when it comes to his games.
Greedy.
Very greedy. And, he's just back on the weekend to performing how we know he can this year. And I think probably the biggest takeaway for us this year is that we've got a top flight midfielder who's been sitting on our list all along. We've been saying this all year, but this guy reads the play, reads the tap, reads the contested possession better than most players in the competition. He's unbelievable below his knees, and he's unbelievable reading the tap from the ruckman, and that's only going to improve once he builds a bit of synergy with Sammy Drapes. So what an exciting thing it is to have Das just going from strength to strength.
And he's a better kick inside forward 50 than Merrett as well these days, which is really good to see. Don't actually have to rely on Merrett butchering it inside forward 50 every 2 minutes. Can just give it to Das and actually hit someone on the tit.
Just quickly on Das and Merrett, I don't know exactly where it's at the moment, but a couple of weeks ago, they were being spoken about as being on track to be the first teammate midfielders to crack a record for disposals games, and I can only imagine that following the weekend they're right on track to break that.
Yeah, you think so. I think that other good point that you had, Keys, was about him and Das and Sammy Draper, and how they're really working on that kind of tandem together, because you can already see it where, and I think Draper's, I think he's quite exceptional for a kid of. He's clearly exceptional for a kid of his experience with just a handful of games. But he has this knack of being able to really position the ball where he wants it, and to our benefit. And I mean, if you look at the first kind of 5 or 6 taps of the game, he basically won all of them, and it's against Goldstein as well. So I know overall he went down, and Goldstein, I think, was pretty powerful from, I think, the second and third quarters. But and of course that'll come, and that'll be a part of Drapes' game. But he's really is an incredible young ruckman, given how long again that it takes these guys to typically develop, and given his background. I mean, he wasn't playing footy until he was kind of 17 or so, apparently. So come from a soccer background, goalkeeper in soccer, and somehow he's managed to translate that into being this incredibly aggressive and really quite, bizarrely nuanced ruckman at AFL level. So this guy is just going to be an absolute monster of the game.
No, absolutely. And I think just on that as well, one thing for Sammy to work on in the off season would just be his goal kicking, because he's the type of guy who can push forward. Like, he's more athletically gifted than a lot of the ruckmen that he's going to typically come up against. But if he can add this string to his bow, where he's probably going to be presented with 2 or 3 goal kicking opportunities per game, if he can reliably convert on those, then the sky's the limit for him. If he's bobbing up for 1 to potentially 2 goals a game here and there, then he's the type of guy that could feature in All Australians in the same staple sense that a Max Gawn has.
Do we think that we could potentially be playing Phillips up forward in this side, noting that Harry Jones is out? And
for the remainder of this year?
Yeah, I mean, if Harry Jones has, stress fractures or close to stress fractures in his foot, then it's got to be the end of the season. It'd be stupid if we played him at all through the remainder of it. So I think, from what I've seen of Phillips this year, the opportunities he's had at goal, he's absolutely nailed it. Like, it's almost bizarrely that 2 meter Peter and him are almost our best set shots this year. So I'd actually wouldn't be opposed to it at all. And we know what he can do with his follow-up work.
Yeah, it's not the worst call. I guess just got to see how fit he is. Like, he's going to have to come back, and I mean, there's obviously no VFL now because of COVID, and then he'll have to play some scratch matches. So I'm not sure. I'm not even. I assume he went up. I actually haven't seen any photos or anything of him to indicate that he went up. But I assume he's there.
Yeah, I think they've travelled with most of the list, because you're seeing a few guys on the long-term injury list, like a Caldwell, featuring up there.
Andy McGrath's up there.
Yeah, Langford's up there. Yeah. So look, he probably is. I want to have a chat about Brayden Ham. Been a bit of a whipping boy on this show and just in general to a lot of people.
He was good.
I know Damo loves to rip on him, but he had a really, really good game. And the knock's never been his effort. Like, we always know that he has a crack, but it was just his decision making and some of his skills sometimes. But outside of that one play where he got the handball chain and he should have had the shot, but he didn't. But like outside of that, he had a really, really good game. And
I think Damo just gets a bit competitive with the guys who are a similar height to him. So that tends to be the rationale for those ones. But absolutely, and I don't think anyone. Well, I'll speak for myself and say I didn't really see it coming because he certainly hasn't had a great couple of weeks. But yeah, happy to say he really, really proved me wrong. On the weekend, his run was absolutely terrific. He took the game on. He backed himself a lot, which is great to see. And in that goal he kicks, again, taking on Aaron Hall, he just did it quite easily and had really got back that yard of pace that we probably haven't seen him utilise that much. So played that real breaking the lines kind of game plan that we need from him.
Yeah. Before you go, Jess. The most contested marks taken by an Essendon player on the weekend, there was 2 marks to James Stewart, and there was 2 contested marks to Brayden Ham. So, and he's one of the shortest guys on the ground. So
I was just about to say that it was pretty impressive. I think he took a contested mark on Robbie Tarrant as well.
Yes, he did.
On the wing on their best defender.
Yeah, that's right.
There's someone. I think it was Guelf. Guelf chose to kick to Brayden Ham on the wing with Robbie Tarrant. And me and my dad are sitting there like, oh, this is possibly the worst option. This is as bad as kicking a tipper and Tarrant. But his body work on Tarrant and throughout the entire game, positionally, I think that it wasn't just his yard of pace, but his positioning man on man throughout the entirety of the game was elite. The amount of times that he would have a player running to the ball on the wing in open space and would do a sidestep or something to allow for the defender to, follow him, and then he would grab the ball and pick it up, turn him around. I mean, there's enough there at the moment for me with Ham to say that he's someone that we can project, and there's enough attributes there outside of his physical body weight that could produce a fairly good winger for us in the future.
I think just on that as well, so I can't quite recall now thinking about it whether he was he a late in for the game or
for Jones.
For Jones, cool. Look, in terms of late ins, I think he's got far more runs on the board than a Ned Carl at the moment. Ham's actually had like a handful of really, really solid performances for the team. So as much as he can be in the firing line sometimes, there was that game against Collingwood. Was it last year, which was sort of seen as like his first breakout game for the club. And I know it's been very topsy-turvy since then. It hasn't at all been smooth sailing, but he has this ability to put together pretty solid performances. And I do think that he definitely is one worth persisting with, and that, in future years, he's going to improve, hopefully out of sight. And I would not be surprised if within a couple of years, he is just a staple of the 22. And that's what we should be striving for.
Yeah, I think that's what we'd all like to see. And to be honest, I'd really like to see downfield Devon Smith just get booted before anyone at this stage. So
he's so frustrating.
Before you tee off on Devon, people do forget Brayden Ham played in that final against West Coast a few years ago. As a first-year player. So, they definitely see something in him.
So did BZT.
Yeah, so did BZT.
And also, just to say, John Worsfold was the coach at the time. To be playing a first-year player in a final under John Worsfold says a lot.
Yeah, anyway, that was we'll forget that day ever happened.
Can I give a quick positive as well, Rob?
Yeah, give you a positive and then we'll tee off.
This is actually going to be a joint positive because I can't not talk about this guy. But first half of Archie Perkins was just incredible. I thought he was one of our most influential on the ground. And in the end, the stats they certainly don't read that well because he didn't get a touch in the third quarter, and then pretty sure was injured in the last quarter. let's hope it's not too serious. But his first half was exceptional. The other one, and again, this is a guy who's certainly a bit of a whipping boy, but Tom Cutler has put together 2 really strong performances the last 2 weeks. And
So
I think
good.
him alongside Ham have really shown us what, I guess, 2 different variations of that winger role. And I think Cutler's probably playing a half-back wing kind of role,
Yeah.
and Ham on the weekend was certainly playing a half-forward/wing role. And yeah, you see what that kind of run with the ball in hand. And I think both of them have really good kicks and long kicks. Cutler has significant pace when he wants to go. And yeah, the past 2 weeks, he's certainly for the first time ever, he's looked like he can be a real weapon for us. So I'm one who's really hoping that this confidence, that he gets from these past 2 weeks gets to his head, because I think he's probably a confidence player. And he starts to actually believe that, I can be someone who can contribute to this team and be a really strong contributor going forward.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Love his aerial work.
It's amazing. Just one sec on the topic of that. Sorry for cutting you off, but it's amazing what happens when wingers take the game on. In particular, I don't think has been a single passage of play where Cutler hasn't thought of just going when he gets the ball.
It's like what Sard used to do with those kinds of plays. It's like, look at what Hindy has done when we really need someone to take the game on, like you say, Jets. And you look at what Hind has done this year, and he's almost unstoppable. And Cutler has that very similar kind of desire to just take the game on. When at times, like you said, when we opened up, that we're playing very stagnant football, and for whatever reason, we're just not giving the handball when it's on. We're taking the mark and deciding to go back and slow down the game. I think that's a coaching directive. Guys like Cutler, they are so important. Guys like how Ham played on the weekend, Hindy for the whole year, they really are the ones that make a difference. And especially when you lose a McKenna and a Sard in the off-season.
Yeah, well said. Look, I think we're all a bit disappointed in the way Devon Smith's been going. Yeah, like for someone who was playing a fair bit of midfield time, I don't think he got a touch in the first quarter, or maybe he got one. I know
I think he had a touch in the first half, did he?
Yeah, look, he did kick a really vital goal.
I thought he just gave away 50 in the first half, and that was it.
Yeah, but it's just the same issues just keep coming up week after week. And I mean, I'm at the point now where after, like, you see, sparing performances by Brayden Ham, you see what a Durham can do, Archie Perkins, and then the guys who are going to come back in. Like, we had a conversation 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I said, is he in the first 22? And everyone said yes. I reckon that's changed now. I think everyone's opinion has changed. Like,
I agree. Not anymore at all. He's just not up to it anymore. That yard of pace that he's lost, unfortunately, has just been the at this stage what looks like to be the end of his career.
I don't know though. He had some good games earlier this year, and then he was out for a bit after. Obviously, he did that hammy and missed a few weeks, but he actually strung together some pretty decent performances. So I'm not sure he's completely done, but what does him is when he's not having a good game and he's not getting near it, and then he still does this bullshit, fake tough guy stuff that is just like, it's not kidding anyone. It's not tough. It doesn't have any effect on the contest. It's often after a guy has disposed of the ball. And if you look at how umpires are interpreting that, after the play kind of rule now, as soon as you touch someone when you're not in the contest, then it's going to be downfield. So just don't do it. Like, unless you're already tackling him, you're a fair chance to actually stop them disposing of the ball. Just don't do it. And yet, week in, week out, I mean, Truck's obviously, he said he's had the conversation with him a few weeks back now, but we've seen it happen for 3 weeks since the Melbourne game. The Melbourne game when he gave away 250. So for me, it's just at the point where it's dropping him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no other way for me. It's just you've got to drop him.
I think the issue is now that we just don't have the depth to have
got
that
no
option.
one left.
there's exactly like you talk about who's going to come
Yeah,
in. I mean,
I understand that, but we say that, and then we've got a guy who's in the side who's contributing 0 disposals for a half a footy and giving 1 downfield free kick after he's done it the previous 2 or 3 weeks as well.
Yeah.
Like, bring in
I think
anyone. I don't care who you bring in. Just bring in
Dylan
someone.
Clark.
He doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. He's
Thanks.
incredibly frustrating player to support. I mean, on this podcast, we've advocated for him previously to be put into the leadership group at the height of his performances. He used to be this type of player who could harness that aggressive streak in his game to just get the absolute best out of both himself and the teammates as well, like the type of player who could lay a smother, who could do a pressure act, who could lay a tackle that would just lift everyone. But now it seems more often than not, he's often on the receiving end of a really adverse free kick, one that really penalises us in the context of a game.
It's misplaced aggression now.
Misplaced aggression, exactly right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you, Merty. I don't think he's done. He's too talented a player to be done, but there's something that he needs. He needs to go to a couple of yoga classes or something to clear his head out.
Yeah.
And come back refreshed and, start playing the football that we know he can, because otherwise, as soon as we start getting a few more players to select from, his position is going to be under a lot of pressure.
Can I launch into a bad, Rob?
Yeah, give us a bad and then we'll take a break.
I think that Nick Cox needs to understand football at a higher level than he currently does. I can't remember the last time Nick Cox went and decided to take the game on. Every single time I've seen him get the ball over the past 3 or 4 weeks, he is so slow at moving the ball. I'm not exactly sure what's going on at the moment, and I'm not too sure whether you guys have noticed it, but Coxie has been so slow at transitioning the ball, and it's having a massive impact, particularly on the wings with our transition from forward to back line. So I just thought I would point out Coxie. You're still learning, mate, but seriously, you got to go quicker sometimes.
Yeah, look, he does look a bit slow. I think he might be just a bit afraid of,
I think he's
taking the wrong option.
He's obviously lost a whole lot of confidence after his, really good start to the year. I feel like at the moment he's kind of getting caught between. I think sometimes he does take it on, but he doesn't. He's not taking it on with any real intensity, and I mean that was quite different to his start of the year. So I think it's just a confidence thing, and he'll work it out. But I think you're right in that. I just want to see. I feel like he's just handballing way too much as well. Like he's almost trying to take the tackle and then not breaking it, rather than like you're one of the best kicks in our team. Take on the tackle, break the tackle, and kick the ball, or get the ball, explode, like run 20 meters and boot it as far as you can, or hit a target, or whatever you want to do. Instead, he just seems to be kind of going, looking up, then giving off the hands. And I'm not sure it's not using his skill set to the best of his capacity.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Like, yeah, he's great with his hands, but I don't know. Maybe guys that size aren't that quick. I don't know. But yeah, no.
Well, he took
saw
on
him
Nick
against Nick, and he's absolutely lightning quick.
Yeah.
He's won out 2K in the
Mm.
preseason as well. So he's got no problems with his running ability and athleticism.
Yeah, he just needs to take it on. I was annoyed like when he had that time he ran to goal, and I was like, I thought he was gonna have a shot on the left, and then he just did that dinky ball off, went out of bounds to the right, and I was just like, oh,
he was just rattled.
Yeah, he's a bit rattled.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's take a break, boys. We'll come back and we'll chat about the run home and what the hell is going on with COVID footy at the moment. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to look at the run home to wrap out a show because, the fixtures all over the place at the moment. Everyone's very confused. COVID's affected everything. The Dons are getting the short stick, and look, it's pretty upsetting. But we'll work our way through it. So,
is it COVID or is it Gil?
I'd say it's both, and maybe Zav as well. We'll throw him in there too. But so the current schedule. So our game has been moved from Saturday to Sunday against GWS. We're now playing on the 25th. Venue is still TBC, they say it's going to be in Queensland, so I'm assuming it's either the Gabba or Metricon. Then the following week, we're playing Sydney at Metricon on the Friday night. And then obviously we assume we're going to come back to Melbourne by this point. But look, a lot of people have been asking why we're the only Vic team that's still outside the state. And my understanding is that the idea is that if the Sydney sides are able to return home, they can do so without having to go into quarantine. And being Queensland is the only safe way to do that. And sadly, we're the team who's playing them. So that's just it, really. Look, I still wouldn't be surprised.
It's pretty convenient.
Yeah, I mean, it's convenient for them.
Because we played North in Queensland.
Yeah.
On the weekend. We played North in Queensland yesterday.
Yeah. Exactly.
Whereas like Carlton and Collingwood played at the MCG. So yeah, do the maths.
Doesn't make much sense, really, does it? At all?
No.
I'll ask you boys this: Would you rather see Dons fans at Metricon or at the Gabba watching footy, or Merdicon, whatever you want to call it? Would you rather see Dons fans at a ground in Queensland watching, or would you rather see an empty stadium in Melbourne?
Dons fans watching, except I think the question as well is how well we perform at the venue, and our record at Merdicon is pretty horrific.
Yeah.
My answer to that, if we're versing an interstate team in Melbourne with no crowd, but if we're versing a Melbourne team, I'm happy to verse them interstate with a crowd.
Yeah,
just takes away a massive advantage to us.
Like I want to play GWS in Sydney in Melbourne at Marvel.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I want to play.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sydney's got a good record at Marvel, as we know. But yeah, I do tend to agree with you guys that I would rather see us play interstate sides in Melbourne. It's taking away our advantage. I mean, I talked about on our Primo show that there's a potential that we're going to end the season playing, 15 games or something. I think it's 15 games interstate, potentially, depending on how the back half of the season goes. And we might only play 5 or 6 home games actually at home grounds, which is crazy to think. And yeah, look, it's pretty frustrating. I can see that Essendon supporters are filthy, but it's not like we can go here in Melbourne to games.
Well, I think the other thing is that we've only, if you look at, and it's not just a this year thing, but if you look at the last 10 years, I think we played Sydney and Melbourne something like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
that's the same with GWS. So there's a serious fixture inequality, and I know it's not just clearly this weekend and the following weeks, but I mean it's been ongoing for some time, and it would be nice if Xavier Campbell had a spine and would do something about it, because it seems like far too often. And again, this may be a discussion for another time, but you look at the free kick count on the weekend, and again, we've got the rough end of the stick, and it seems like it's 80% of the time at this stage that we are getting the rough end of the stick. So I'd like to see an administration that was vocal, and without being a Richmond and complaining about going to Marvel, I'd like to see an administration that was willing to actually stand up and fucking do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, Zav was on SEN today, and he said, we'd love to be back in Melbourne, and we only want to be in Queensland as long as we need to be. So, I mean, that was basically the short. And he basically repeated himself 4 different times. And someone said on Twitter that it sounds like he's preparing his resume to join the AFL. But look, I think it's been that way for a fair while too. Yeah, look, I'm not quite sure if he was saying that from Queensland or if he's down at Lamaro's in South Melbourne, where he's usually hanging out. So not entirely sure on that one. I mean, look, it is. Look, I think the reason we're all so upset is that we just copped such a weighted interstate draw at the first half of the year. And, I remember sitting there being like, oh, man, the back half of the year's going to be great. There's going to be so many games at Marvel, go so much footy. Obviously when we were still dealing with, 30% crowds, I was like, well, by the end of the year, we'll probably be able to go. People tire out, as you know. But, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It seems like a bit of a rort. Like, I've chatted to a few mates who go for other teams. I'm like, oh, how many home games have you played this year? And they're like, oh, like this many? I'm like, yeah, we've only played like 6 so far.
Mm.
We're about to lose 2 of them. Like, I don't know. There's like I understand that the Sydney teams have been very heavily affected, and they're probably the only teams who've had it as worse as us. And I guess Brisbane and Gold Coast had a little short scare, but most of the other Victorian teams have had very little affected to them. SA have had no effect, and Perth have had 0 as well. So, yeah,
Look,
it's a bit of a rot.
There are some positives to take out of it, being obviously a really young side. You need to win interstate if you want to win flags.
That's
and
true.
We've actually proven this year that we're a fairly strong team traveling. We've won quite a number of our interstate games, some of them actually in front of crowds as well. So, I mean, really going up to Sydney, losing by a couple of points, beating West Coast, obviously traveling to Gold Coast at Murdercon where we never play well, getting a win. All of these games that we're playing, and if we do for the remainder of the year, it's not like we're going to win a flag this year. So the only positive that we can take out of it is it's more traveling with the team, it's more preparation playing interstate, so that, you know, in the years to come, we can become a really strong and menacing team at those venues.
Yeah, and I think that was certainly the perspective that I took with our early rounds draw, and traveling that much, that it's really just going to be ultimately, you hope, to the benefit of the players, which, you know, in the end, it's no doubt it's disappointing being dealt this card, I guess, at this stage of the season when we could be pushing for finals, and, you know, we still are pushing for finals. So we'll see how that's actually affected in the end, I guess. But yeah, I think you're right, Jesse, and ultimately, I think it's going to be, you know, hopefully a good experience for the players. But I think the other side of it is we are nurturing a really positive environment at the moment, positive footballing environment. It seems to be that way across the board. It seems to have come down from the likes of Truck and Carousella and Gia as well, through the coaches, and, you know, the kind of cultural change that they've tried to implement. And you can tell the players, we spoke about Packo earlier, that it seems the players are really playing for each other and they love being in that environment. So, you know, the other side of it is that being in that positive environment and traveling for, if it is for 2 or 3 weeks, that could have a very positive effect, a galvanizing effect on the playing group.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Someone messaged the page about it and was just saying, you know, it's crazy to think how last year it seemed like such a toxic environment and all these people wanting to go. And, you know, it's one thing you often hear a lot of diehards say. It's like, if you don't want to play for the Sash, then, you know, we don't want you here. And then you've now got a group who, you know, they're in together, they're mates. You see how much they all get around each other when someone kicks a good goal or does something good. Like, it's a group of guys who like being there together. You know, we're re-signing people. We've had 3 guys out of big names out of contract, and, like, you know, by the look of it, we're going to have all 3 deals done, which is an amazing result. You know, we're not seeing one of our gun midfielders walk. So yeah, I do agree, Mert. It is a great culture sign. Looks, you know, we've copped a short stick. I would hope that we get some favourable draws our way next year. Although,
is it confirmed that we're playing GWS at Murdercon or the Gabba?
It's confirmed.
We'll be in Queensland.
It's confirmed we're in Queensland. So unless we're going up to Townsville or Cairns, then it's going to be one of those 2. Look, someone wrote, I saw a guy on Twitter, he said, you know, the devil's advocate for this. He's like, look, we have some certainty over our next 2 games when a lot of teams don't. So we know who they are. We know where they're going to be. You know, it's one of these 2 grounds. The players can actually get out and about. They're not locked in quarantine like all the Victorian players are, who are all just sitting at home. They can actually go out. They can do stuff. They're, you know, able to live semi-normal lives, albeit away. The Swans have a really good record at Marvel. So if you're looking at that game as thing, obviously Gold Coast is a nice place to be this time of year. And they will have some fans in the crowd, whereas I imagine the Giants will have little to none like they always do, and the Swans probably won't have many. So, you know, the devil's advocate is that we will see some Dons fans there who've been treated to a lot of footy in the last couple of years. But yeah, I can understand the frustration from all the Essendon faithful out there who pay their hard-earned and have, you know, quite expensive memberships to get good seats. And it's a second year in a row they've felt like they've been, you know, stooged out of it. Last year, obviously, was pretty crazy. But this year, it does feel like we've cop the short stick, and you'd hope the AFL is going to try and do something to, recuperate some of the losses that the Essendon faithful have had. So anyway, that's my take, boys. Any final thoughts, boys? Otherwise, we'll wrap for an evening because I can smell my dinner.
Yeah, fuck Gillan McLaughlin.
There we go. We'll end on that note. Thanks for joining me, Mert. Pleasure as always. Listeners, thanks very much for listening to the very end. Apologies for the lack of a proper microphone, but it is what it is in these times. If you're a premium subscriber, we'll be back on Thursday with some more content for you as we preview the game. Trying to land an interview this week as well, so stay tuned for that. If you're not a subscriber, though, get onto thehorde.com or just find the link in any of our social channels. You can support the show directly and you get to listen to bonus content throughout the year. So thanks, everybody.
And it's $5. It's $5.
It's only $5. So thanks for listening and go Dons.
Go Dons.
Go Dons.